Hello viewers, Super GT here. So I jumped onto the daily races on Gran Turismo 7 this week, and interestingly we have a Group 2 race. Now this class is kind of a weird one because it's dominated by two cars, one of which is this, the CLK LM98, the Mercedes, beautiful car, but also the Super GT GTR Nismo GT500 16, a Super GT car. Both very different types of car, but they've kind of been bunged together in the same class. Now this race has been dominated on the leaderboard by the GT500, but I jumped onto this race and in my first one, interestingly, we had someone in the CLK LM, as you can see just in front of us, and this is kind of where two worlds collide. In hopefully not two cars collide, but two worlds collide, two different philosophies, because as I said, these two very differing cars from different eras have been bunged together into Group 2 together, and the way in which they race against each other is quite unusual, because check this out. Look at the absolute lack of speed or downforce of the CLK through that corner. Now, these two cars achieve a very similar lap time around this track, Fuji International Speedway, but they both achieve their lap time in very different ways. And as you can see here in the radar, the Mercedes is coming back straight back at me, and it's going to look up the inside. You can see that on the radar, at least on the bottom of the screen. And this kind of set up a very interesting premise for this race and for this video. The fact that this class is mainly dominated by two very different cars, which have to be raced very differently. And I was going to try and beat that car in, well, the GT500, the Super GT car. It'd be rude of me to not choose a Super GT car, wouldn't it? But then onto the main straight, this is where things get quite interesting. Take a look at this. You see the Mercedes behind, and it lost a lot of time through turn 3, but it gains it all back. Actually, turn 4, I mean. But it gains it all back on the main straight. Look at the speed difference. It's kind of unreal how much more power that car has. So it's a really interesting concept here. Trying to beat the Mercedes in the Nissan here, and then you see through turn 1 actually it gets a really tidy exit. But we're going to see it again through turn 3 here, the fast sweeping left, and then it's just this long right hander. The Mercedes, just look at it, it's absolutely shocking. It has no pace through that corner at all, and going onto the grass slightly. So we're going to try and beat this car. It's going to be a really topsy-turvy kind of race. This kind of is what happens when you have two cars that achieve their lap time very differently. One has straight line speed, one has the handling. I'm definitely in the handling car, of course. We're going to try and get a little bit closer to this guy, but you know, a couple of laps later, beginning of lap 3, eventually he was close enough to go for the move on the leader. Wasn't quite able to do it there, but he definitely had the pace in that Mercedes to move forward, and I couldn't really do too much about it. In fact, they had, I think it looked like a collision here, telltale sign being the smoke screen being deployed out the back of the cars. But then, again, he loses about 8 years of his life going through this corner. Look how slow that thing is. It's amazing. It really does lose all of its time pretty much in one corner and gains it all back on the straight. So it'll be very interesting to give that car a go, see how it performs. Eventually, you might be able to see some of those pixels on the screen there, representing the Mercedes actually taking the lead. It looked like the Nissan defended, went too deep, and he got old switcherooed, of all things. By the end of the race, lap 6, you can see the joy on the Mercedes as he swerves to finish the race in the lead. And there it was. All the Nissans have been beaten by the CLK LM. Very interesting, because the CLK was not the fastest car in time trial, but it seemed to do very well in the race. But let's jump into the second one. Let's see if we can do something better about this, because I felt like I could have beaten him if I just performed a little bit better. I wasn't too far away. But unfortunately, this race, it kind of just shows you, if you kind of get caught in a pack, it doesn't really help at all. The Mercedes got into the lead very quickly, as you can see. And then it seemed like a bit of a civil war. I felt as though all of us in the Nissan, we kind of had to work together if we wanted to get the better of the CLK. But that wasn't really happening. As you can see, there's a very big group and we're kind of all slowing each other down. It should be a very tactical race when you have two very differing philosophies on the circuit. But here, it's really just one philosophy of let's just kill each other. And that wasn't really working. It wasn't very helpful. So we had some contact there for the final corner. And I was trying to go for the move here on Midnight Pumpkin. It wasn't quite working. You see just the time loss to the cars in front. And unfortunately, the finish driver here managed to just nip up the inside through the final sector. And I wasn't really able to do too much about that, other than potentially just force him off. But that's what I did here. Braked a little bit too late, unfortunately. Straight into the back of Midnight Pumpkin. Losing a handful of positions. And yeah, it just was not a good performance at all. Just dropping many positions, lots of time. So yeah, not a very good race. I did set faster lap of the race, so I knew that I could get into the 29s, which is the kind of pace I needed to win the race. I just couldn't do it consistently enough, and I needed to start further forward. Then we had this incident with the finish driver. Bit of a weird double swerve, almost killing the pair of us, and potentially lots of spectators. Thankfully, it's all virtual, and no one was going to die, but there you go. And then Jimbo. It annoys me that that car won. Me too, my friend. We're going to try and do something about it. So I set a slightly better qualifying time, which would hopefully move me a bit closer towards the front of the pack. So, in the next race, well, the CLK was not there. Obviously, it was bedtime, had to go to sleep, school night and everything. But I'll show you this race anyway, because it was actually a very good race. Now, on the opening lap, I made this mistake here. It didn't look like much, but then TCS happened to be on. I don't know why the game does that sometimes. Sometimes your traction control is just on, even though you turned it off last time. And so maybe someone's been joyriding my Nissan GT500 with TCS on. They forgot to turn it off when they handed it back after their joyride. There you go. We lost a lot of time here to the leader. So at the end of lap 1, the gap was about 1.2, 1.3. Managed to reel that gap back in by putting in some fairly consistent laps in the low 130s. I know I can get into the 129s, we did that in the previous race, but low 130s, decent race pace. I'll straight back on to Midnight Pumpkin. We'll try not to punt him off, we'll try to actually overtake him properly. But you see here, through turns 3, 4 and 5, this part of the circuit, lots of very high-speed downforce corners, and it's very difficult to follow the car in front. So the strength of this car is its high downforce speed. Its speed through the high downforce corners, but then that's also a bit of a problem when you're following another car. Now here I wasn't quite close enough to go for the move at the beginning of lap 5. I was very close though. Looking up the inside here into turn 3. I'm going to go for it. I was kind of only half there. Didn't really work out. Neither of us crashed, so it kind of worked out, I suppose. But later on in the lap, I still remained right on his tail. And kind of surprisingly, coming out of the final turn, he didn't really defend. I was expecting him to move right here. He didn't. I moved right instead. I had the inside line. Kind of a weird one because he was defending elsewhere, but didn't really decide to defend the main place on the track, which is the long straight into turn 1. And parked on the apex, drove away. Thankfully, that was that. It was really a case now of just trying to get a good middle sector here, trying to pull away, and thankfully that had a couple of good consecutive corners, throwing some dirty air into his face, and he wasn't able to really live with the pace through that section, and just pulled a bit of a gap there. By the end of the race, a second ahead, winning the race. So it was a good battle. I wanted to fight the CLK, but it wasn't there. So I couldn't really fight someone that isn't there, can I? So we're going to move on. If I can't race against the CLK, I'll have to be the CLK. So we're going to jump back into our garage, choose the car. We've used it a couple of times before. We've got a nice little livery on it. Slap on some soft tyres. It's a good job they've added that menu there where you can buy them. It actually is very useful. And we can give it a quick test drive because it's through this section here, I would say through turns 3, 4 and 5, where the car just, yeah, it's just comically slow compared to the GT500. It feels like an eternity going through there. In fact, I've actually aged about 13 years in the time it took me to go around that turn. So I'm now celebrating my 44th birthday. Anyway, through this final section, it was actually not too bad. On the main straight, of course, you know, this is where it gains its speed. You can see they're reaching 188 miles an hour. Through turn 1 as well, this car's actually pretty good. I would say it's better through turn 1 than it is than the Nissan. Interestingly, the Nissan was reaching about 179 miles an hour. So it doesn't sound like a lot of difference, but it is quite a big difference. But there we go. Jump into this next one. And we are starting second on the grid. Up against the Nissan. I am now the Mercedes CLK. Let's see if we can try and beat the Nissan in a Rolls reversal. So this should be quite good fun. I wanted to attack nice and early. I wasn't really close enough to go for the move here. But we are going to see how the dynamic of this race plays out, because it is a very interesting race when you have such different cars, as I've mentioned about 4,000 times. Getting a penalty, not really used to the car turning in a little bit too early into turn 3. Half a second penalty. And you see they're losing a good second or so just through that middle sector. You have to really try to fight that one back. I kept close with him to have the penalty. And luckily enough, I was able to stay away from the cars behind just about enough so that I didn't lose a position. And that's the thing you've got to be really conscious of. You have to keep a nice gap before you get to turn 3. Because if there's someone's right behind you going into turn 3, you're just going to get overtaken. This car can do nothing through that long right-hander of turn 4. Eventually, at the end of lap 3, you know, just reeling him in, managed to do a 29.9, so that's actually good pace in this car. Getting down to pretty much the pace I was able to do in the Nissan. So that's a good sign. I must say that this guy in the lead, he was very, very fast and very consistent. And this is about as close as I could really get to him. He wasn't really putting a foot wrong. He wasn't really making any mistakes. I was hoping for the best. But let's take a look at this, right? So going into turn 3, I'm just under 7 tenths behind. So let's see how much time I lose, actually. Quite an interesting comparison between the two cars. He actually takes a very interesting line through there, but he's got so much downforce, he can really just almost keep it flat out with a bit of a lift, I would say, in that car. And then through turn 5, this car just takes a longer time to get rotated. And you see that I've lost about a second. I've lost 1 second just through those 3 corners alone. But let's make a comparison here on the main straight. Going onto the main straight, I'm 1.8 behind. And then you can see the time just slowly whistle away as you really get to unleash the muscle and the power of the Mercedes power unit. So let's take a look at this. Going down the straight, you know, the 10th is just coming off effortlessly. By the time we go into turn 1, we've gained about 8 tenths, and I would still say this car is quicker through turn 1 and on the exit on the run up to turn 3. And we'll take another look at the time gap. So as we go into turn 3, 1 lap later, gap is about 8 tenths. So overall in that lap I lost about 2 tenths, but you see just how different it is, the delivery of speed throughout the lap. Now I made that mistake and it lost me about 1.2 seconds, which was really unfortunate because it turns out that he had a penalty which I didn't know about, and I managed to reel him right back in. You can see how much time he lost. The gap was about 0.6 by the time I got to here, so I think if I didn't make that mistake on the curb, I might have challenged for the lead there in the final lap, but unfortunately it was a P2. It was a very good race, to be fair. I finished within 1 second of him in the end, and you know, he fought the same. It was a very good race. It was an interesting race. It was almost like a Cold War. We kind of fought the race from a distance, but we were very wary of each other's presence, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. But we move into the next one. So once again, starting P2. Let's see if we can do a better race this time around and not get a penalty on the first lap. That would help. Now this guy made a bit of a mistake there by defending too much, and it kind of put him on a bad exit coming out of the turn. So I was able to challenge with the power of the Mercedes. You see it going up the inside. Went a little bit too deep. I was just really trying to upset his rhythm. If I could get ahead of him going into turn 4, I could potentially slow him down through turn 4. You can see the speed difference here is ridiculous. Nothing I can do. The GT500 going clean around the outside effortlessly. And before you know it, I'm in P5, almost P6. I'm going to try and challenge back for this position. This car is actually a little bit quicker down this straight here as well, going down towards the hairpin. I managed to regain P4, which is good. But this is going to be a very difficult race from here on in, to try to wrestle back these positions. But this is the challenge we know and love. This is the challenge I set myself, to try to win a race in this car. And we're going to try and do it here. Through the final sector, this car, I would say, is 95% as good as the GT500, or 90% as good through this final sector. The low-speed mechanical grip is actually fairly similar, just the high-speed stuff where this car suffers. But now look at this. This is where we can. It's almost like we've got nitrous oxide, and it's like you're watching Too Fast, Too Furious. I'm in gear 78. Keep shifting, put your foot all the way down, and boom, you just go past the opposition. They're stuck in like gear 3, not really pressing full throttle. They're a little bit deep. Such was the excitement of doing a double overtake. And then this guy goes back past. So, very topsy-turvy race, as you can see. We're going to look up the inside. I thought better of it. We're going to stick behind. He goes a little bit wide. Bit of a knock-on effect with the car behind there, but we all get through just fine. No penalties to be dished out. So here is really a case of, if there's a car behind, just trying to take a nice sort of middle of the road line to kind of half block them off. You can see on the radar, you see as we look behind, there's an army of cars trying to overtake me right now. So through that section, you're just a sitting duck. There's not much you can do other than just take the middle of the road line, hope that they don't go for the move. But you literally lose like 0.7 of a second through one corner. It really is that bad in this car. It's quite funny, to be fair. But we just settle into the race. It's lap 2. The leader is pulling away. He's 2.5 seconds ahead. We can definitely get P2 back within a few laps, I would have thought. We're going to try and set up a nice run onto the straight. And then we should be able to go past this guy on the main straight here. Let's take a look. 0.8 behind at the beginning of the straight, in the slipstream as well. Slipstream assisted move. Boom, we fly past him. 188, 189, 190 miles per hour. And then I just make the same mistake. Glitch in the matrix, bit of deja vu. It looks like the same clip almost. He goes back in front. Now I noticed he made a mistake here when I kind of half fainted to go up to the inside. And he did the same again here. He goes a bit too narrow this time. Gets himself slapped with a 0.5 second penalty, which he serves here. Go past. And this time I had a clear run to try and challenge the leader. Although I must say it didn't actually matter. So you can see the leader there, some of those pixels on the screen. And then, boom, it just disappears completely into thin air. Just gets kidnapped by, I don't know. I mean, it's like that film Looper, where people just disappear through time. And then suddenly, I find myself in the lead of the race. It's not how I really wanted to win the race, by having your main opponent kidnapped through time. But there you go. Sometimes you just got to take the win, haven't you? And in this one, same car, same track, same everything, but we're starting on pole position. It definitely does change the dynamic of the race, having to just pull away rather than overtake someone. The main thing I was trying to do is survive the onslaught of the first lap. You see here on the radar there, you might have just seen it. You really did try to get past there. I just kind of held kind of middle of the road line, stopped him from going for the move, and then it's really a case of just trying to pull away on the straight and just extend that gap. That was really the case of this race. That was really the strategy here. And then the consistency was good. I was actually really pleased. Look at that, 30.3, 30.2, 30.3, 30.2. So very good consistency. I could have perhaps gone a little bit quicker, but the car behind was actually faster. He did 29.7. He was half a second quicker on his best lap, but he just wasn't able to challenge consistently. And this is the final sector of the race. Now, my main takeaway from this little experiment here is really that I think it is good that these two cars, that you can race them against each other. It is a little bit weird sometimes, but I would say that this car is very good. You just have to kind of, ideally you need to lead from the front. If you're in this car in the mid-pack, it is just a bit of a nightmare because you get swarmed in the middle sector. It is a good challenge though, it is a very good challenge. And eventually we'd come across the line to win the race. And this one was just a legit win from pole, yes, but it was just a good, consistent win. I mean, looking at the lap times there, even the final lap was a 30.2 as well. So good consistency overall. The first lap, ignore that because it's a shorter lap technically. But it was a race win, and I was very happy with that actually. It was a good little challenge. I enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm presuming you did because you're still here. But thank you so much. Get yourself subscribed if you're new to the channel, and have yourself an amazing day. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.